Greetings, dear learners. In this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of performance management, how it is useful for the organization, and what is the process involved in helping the individual to improve his or her performance. And then, collectively, as an organization, how do we look at performance and how this performance management aspect, through its performance appraisal and the management process, is useful for the organization at large. So, let us look at the concept in detail one by one. So let's look at the concept of performance management. Armstrong and Barrett would define performance management as a very strategic and integrated approach to deliver sustained success to organizations by improving performance of people who work in them and by developing the capabilities of teams and individual contributors. Now, where does performance as a concept come about? In terms of performance, in terms of what an individual or a group has to be doing on their job, what is the standard or the expected level of performance that the management of the organization is expecting from the individual or the organization? Now, this is largely derived from the strategic plan of the organization, from which jobs are generated, and from those jobs, we have job standards through the job analysis, and then those gives us those standards or the metrics will give us the expected level of performance that we want our employees as well as groups working in teams to be contributing, and that sustained continuous process of monitoring employee performance and then enabling them to be able to reach the standard and be able to excel and exceed is what performance management is truly what it is in the organization. So performance management is an ongoing process of communication between the supervisor and an employee that occurs throughout the year. It's not something that we understand as a one-time process. It begins with the whole process of the superior and subordinate, the team leader and the team members coming together and then setting objectives. So in the beginning of the appraisal period, which is very often the beginning of the strategic year, is where the individual reporting to a superior or a supervisor or the team members reporting to a team leader collectively sit and decide the objectives. What is the way forward? What does the organization want us to do? What are we supposed to do as a department? What is our expectation on our job? So we set objectives, and once those objectives are set, then the supervisor or the team leader explains or discusses the performance standards and expectations. So, what is expected of what kind of quantity of job? What's the quality of job? What's the nature of the task that is required? What is the expectations that we have about from the individual in terms of his attitude, knowledge, behavior, and performance? Everything is discussed so that there is absolute clarity with the employee and the team members that they know what exactly is expected of them. So we identify goals, we set goals, we prioritize as to what goals are more important and within what time frame and period are we supposed to accomplish this. And then performance management is also a process of providing feedback. Not at the end of the year when performance appraisal is done that an individual is told that his or her performance was good or not up to the mark or so. It is an ongoing process. Every time a superior or supervisor is able to witness or observe the performance of the employee or gets some data related to the performance of the employee and the team, then and there itself the supervisor has to make an effort or should share feedback, not just negative feedback about areas that they need to improve, but also positively tell them which are the areas that they are doing well, where they are performing well, where we are very happy with their standards and expectations, and which are the areas where they really need to concentrate, focus, and improve. And then you evaluate results and determine what is their performance with respect to their performance matching expectations. Right. Now we look at the twin concepts of performance management and managing performance. Now, when we talk about performance of an employee, it is not something that is possible or is expected from the employee alone, right? The employee has his own knowledge, skills, attitude, other competencies, his commitment, capacity of being able to do. All that is on one side. And then it also depends on what kind of a superior or a supervisor that you're dealing with. What is the kind of leadership action that the superior is able to that he is able to make, he or she is able to make, the mentoring aspect, or how cooperative or how open is the supervisor in terms of helping an employee to understand the job, to clarify job standards or clarify job expectations, right? So this is all one side. With respect to an individual, it's a responsibility of the individual performing the job. It's also the responsibility of the supervisor or the manager who's guiding. Right. Then comes, both of them are part of the organization system. So the kind of policies that we have, the kind of systems, the processes, the practices, right? What kind of reward compensation mechanism, what kind of reward systems do we have, right? What is the procedure for handling grievances? So, as an organization, we need to create an HR climate, right? A conducive, encouraging, motivating, and appreciating kind of an environment within the organization in which the superior as well as the subordinate both are able to perform in a very confident manner, in a manner whereby they feel that they are able to work comfortably, confidently, and contribute to the goals of the organization. Now, let's look at the various factors influencing individual performance. As I told you, performance is not just the onus or the responsibility of the individual. A lot depends on the individual, a lot depends on the organization as well. Let's look at some of the points relating to the individual. What is the commitment that the individual has towards the organization, right? And the way he's been selected, the personality of the individual, the attitude, the knowledge, skill, ability, right? And the presence of mind that he's able to show, or the proactiveness with which the individual is able to approach the job, the way he's able to take orders, instructions, criticisms, and so on, right? So all of these are related to the individual factors, right? The factors that are very much inherent in an individual, right? Performance also depends on the exterior factors. Very often it is called the hygiene factors, the quality of leadership. What kind of a leader or a manager are you reporting to? What is the kind of support? What's the kind of decision making that the leader is able to take or make with respect to motivating you to perform well? What's the kind of structure that we have, the kind of designing of the jobs or the structure of the hierarchy, the decision making process in the organization, systems and procedures, and what kind of support is offered to you to enable you to perform well, empowering employees, right? Or opportunity to perform, job design, compensation, rewards, benefits, right? Performance is a whole aspect, right? It's not something that is possible through one particular source. It needs collective contribution, right? So this is where I feel like recalling Herzberg's two-factor theory. Herzberg says that if your performance has to be really good or it has to be wholesome and contributory, it depends on both motivating factors that are directly related to the individual and the job. And it also relates to the hygiene factors, which are related to the extrinsic factors which are there in the organization. So collectively, the motivating factors and the hygiene factors will be able to help the individual to perform comprehensively and collectively. So why do performance management systems fail? In many organizations, we see they have a process, they have a system in place, they do the appraisal, but very often it does not give us the kind of benefit or the objective of which performance appraisals are framed, right? The first aspect is individual goals are not linked to the strategy. There seems to be an absolute disconnect. What the individual is doing on the job and the expectations of the job from the individual, and then what the manager is communicating and overall leading to the strategy of the organization. So there is no cascading or a direct linkage between the strategy, the job, and the individual, and that's where performance management and appraisal systems fail. Secondly, there are no consequences for non-performers. So what do you do with non-performers or those who are not performing on the job, right? So if no action is taken against those non-performers, or if they're just made to uh, be alongside those who are performing well, those who are putting the effort necessary contribution to the job of the organization, right? If both of them are looked equally, then the performers definitely will feel bad. Thirdly, employees do not understand. They don't know. They're doing their job, but they don't know what is the extent or the expectation of the organization and the manager. What is the extent to which I'm supposed to be doing my job, right? Fourthly, you're forcing an individual to do the job, and what if the individual does not have the necessary job competencies, the knowledge, skill, ability, and the other competencies? If he or she is not fit for doing the job, if he or she is not the right person for doing the job, you really cannot force them to perform, and performance absolutely is going to be zero or nil, right? Managers do not use individual goals to drive performance. You need to have an individual goal set for each of the individuals who work in your team and your organization, and you should be able to help them, motivate them, encourage them to strive to achieve those goals. Then there are too many goals per employee. When the employee is loaded with too many goals or too much of a workload and is unable to concentrate on what is important or which goal I'm supposed to be picking up and looking at, right? So that's also something that makes the individual a little demotivated, and the individual feels at the end of the day that he's been working really hard and he's not seeing the result what the organization is expecting or the organization wants from him, right? And the performance appraisal system, if it's too cumbersome, complex, and if it's too procedural, it's not very easy for the individual or the employee to understand, and that could also lead to the failure of performance management system. That there's no linkage between performance and rewards. If rewards, compensation, and benefits are not linked, if it's not performance oriented, performance based, and if everybody gets the same kind of compensation, rewards, and benefits, then there's absolutely no emphasis that you're laying on performance. Performance management definitely fails. There are unidentified obstacles. The individual is motivated to perform, the employee is motivated to perform and do the job well, but there are hindrances, there are obstacles. So, as a manager or a leader or an organization, we're unable to identify these obstacles and help and identify these obstacles, help the individual to overcome those obstacles and be able to do well. Performance management systems definitely are going to fail. And if there's no performance feedback that is given to the employee. Employee does not know whether he's doing a good job or not. And if you're waiting for performance appraisal to be over at the end of the year and you're telling the employee that you've been monitoring him for the last 6 months and his performance has not been good, right? And these are the areas where he or she has not done really well, then you don't hold up that feedback till the end of the year, right? You got to give that feedback then and there itself because you're giving an opportunity, telling that person this is where you need to concentrate, this is where you need to improve. And that is where the individual will be able to pick and then be able to concentrate and improve upon his performance. So performance management is seen as separate from day-to-day management of people. So this is something we need to keep in mind. It's not a one-time affair. You're not doing that at just the end of the year. It should be a day-to-day process because there is this interaction that's taking place every day between the superior and subordinate. Use that interaction, use that communication mutually to encourage the subordinate, to help the subordinate to be able to understand the job, clarify the job, help him or her to do well, remove those identified or unidentified obstacles, find out what is making them do well on the job, what is not making them do well on the job, and then be there as a motivator and mentor. Right. Last of all, if employees are not treated properly, they're not treated properly, and if they're not treated for their performances or when they perform well, if adequate recognition, reward, compensation, benefits are not offered to them, then that's when employees feel really hurt and let down, and they start thinking, why at all should I be performing for this organization? I don't get anything at the end of the day, right? So, what can make performance management effective? If you want to make performance management really effective to have that sort of an impact, link the goals and measures to the organization's strategy. Ensure that it is something that starts with the strategy of the organization. From the strategy organization, you should be able to derive job goals and job standards, and then be able to pass that over as the KPIs and the KPAs for the individual employee, and then be able to explain those objectives, explain those goals, clarify them. Ensure that there is a direct linkage between what the employee does and the impact and the benefit that the organization is going to make or achieve. Secondly, individual measures are to be developed by cascading organization objectives. Aside from the strategy, you've got to derive job standards and goals. From the job standards and goals, uh, design the metrics, identify the metrics that are required in terms of KPIs and KPAs, and then clarify that, explain that, and then given all the necessary resources that are required for the employee to do the job well, and then make the employee and be there to monitor, motivate, and be around just in case they need. Identify critical success factors and KPAs for the organization. Each employee has the key result areas or the key performance indicators. We should be able to identify that, explain to them what these KRAs are, why it is very important, why is it earmarked for them to be doing this, right? And what are these priorities, right? And what sort of an impact it's going to have when the employee achieves, right? You should be able to communicate that and then identify any gaps that are there in individual competency. But all the individual is lacking, is motivated to do the job, is willing to do the job, but lacks the ability, has some sort of a knowledge or a skill deficiency, or is in need of some sort of support and help. Make sure you identify that need, that gap, and you address it. And address that through a personal development program or through the effective mentorship or the mentoring program. Through that particular process, you should be able to help and guide and motivate an individual to be able to do well. Right. Next, we're coming to the last part of this particular video on performance management. So, why is a performance appraisal data so very necessary? What are we going to do with that data? Right? It's very important for the organization, not in terms of helping the organization to achieve its standards and goals and strategies. It's important because it gives us an assessment of the current level of performance of the employee. It tells us how good my employee is being able to is doing the job. Is he or she able to meet the job standards? And this helps us to motivate, guide, and identify areas that the individual is lacking in terms of performance, and then it helps us to uh, train the employee to do well. Secondly, it helps us to identify training needs. Only through the performance appraisal data will we be able to know which are the areas where the employee is not doing well, is struggling, and what sort of training support, what sort of personal development is required, what sort of mentoring or what sort of push is required. Unless and until you do the performance appraisal, you don't have the data, you will not be able to identify training needs and training requirements. Thirdly, it helps an individual in helping them to plan their careers. A good performing employee, what are you going to do with them other than paying them compensation and benefits and rewards? One of the most important rewards that an individual is looking for in the job is growth opportunities. Opportunities for growing in the career should be something that must be commensurate to the performance of the individual. Fourthly, compensation programs. You must be able to pay or design your compensation program or package, benefits, rewards, and other bonuses must all be directly linked and related to the performance of the individual. This is what is going to motivate. There has to be a financial motivator that motivates individuals to do well. There has to be a difference between performers and non-performers. Performers do well, they get a bigger pay packet. Non-performers don't do well. They put back into training, given an opportunity, or if in case they do not improve, you're asking them or you're showing them the door. Internal employee relations. Only performance appraisal data is going to help you identify which are the areas in the organization that we're doing well in terms of policies, programs, systems, practices. If at all, if some of these systems that we have, the internal HR systems, are not very conducive, not very helpful, or not aiding or supporting the performance of the employee, then we need to identify, we need to change things over there, right? So this helps us to do or understand our internal HR policies, right? Which helps us to make these policies a little more better in terms of handling employee relations, promotions, demotions, terminations, layoffs, many other things. Performance appraisal data also gives us data to validate, gives us data to validate and say whether we made the right choice. The performance of the individual is what's going to help us to understand that the individual that we chose for this particular job to the organization is the right person for the job that we chose. So only that individual or that employee's performance is going to help us or give us the feedback that we were right in terms of recruitment, we were right in terms of selecting the right candidate for the job. And last of all, it's going to help us in terms of our performance, in terms of the human resource plan. It helps us to make an assessment and then helps us to identify, prepare these individuals or identify who these individuals who can be promoted, who can be used as replacement incumbents for those higher ups who take higher positions, or be able to prepare a plan B of the next generation managers or leaders or potential or employees with high potential who can be groomed to take up higher level managerial positions in the organization, right? So all that is some very important decisions that we've got to make in the life of the individual, and largely it's going to help the organization by retaining these employees, and these retained employees will be able to contribute to the goals and strategies of the organization, right? So that's why performance appraisal management is something that cannot be ignored. It is a very important strategic responsibility of the organization. It is not something that we should be doing only at the end of the year. It should be an ongoing process, a motivating process, to feed forward kind of a process that helps organizations and to individuals to excel in their performances, organization to achieve the kind of results they're looking for, the collective performances and contribution of the employees. Thanks for watching this video. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about the performance appraisal process, and then we talk about the different methods and the different problems that are associated with performance appraisal and management. Thank you so much for watching this video.